Well, it's 28 minutes past 7 with me now in the Wellington studio, the Labour leader Jacinda Ardern. Good morning.
Good morning.
So New Zealand First had 2 meetings with National yesterday, only 1 with Labour. So is that a sign that you're on the back foot?
Oh, no, not at all. Look, we expect that we'll cover the same amount of ground. It's just a matter of pure logistics.
Winston Peters and New Zealand First not keen to meet with the Green Party, though. Why is that?
Oh, I've always set out my expectation and anticipation from the very beginning that Labour would conduct negotiations with the Greens and that Labour would then separately conduct negotiations with New Zealand First. And that is what we're seeing. That's always been my expectation, and that's exactly what's playing out.
But you don't want to have all 3 parties round the table before this is hammered out by the end of the week?
That's not necessary. In the past, with other confidence and supply arrangements, for instance, this is how those negotiations have been conducted, with the major party in that bloc conducting individual and separate negotiations.
So is that an indication that it is going to be confidence and supply only with both parties?
No, that's just simply a reflection of the past agreements and the way that those negotiations have been carried out.
But if New Zealand First and the Greens are potentially going to be in government with Labour and they can't talk now and they don't want to talk now, what hope do you have of actually holding government together?
It's not that a matter of can't and don't want to. It's simply a matter of the way that these negotiations are taking place. And there are even examples, if you go back a long way, where past agreements have been negotiated separately. This is no different.
In a Labour-led government, would there be ministerial positions for both New Zealand First and the Greens?
Look, that's not something I'm going to disclose at this point. We are in the middle of negotiations. I have been asked in the past when I've been speaking on Radio New Zealand whether or not I would have an expectation of, because, and I think the words were used, it would be easier to, whether the Greens would be left on the crossbenches. I, at that point, set out my expectation that that would not be a fair position to leave a party that brings both votes and support to treat them in that way. But beyond that, I'm not going to disclose what's being negotiated.
Is it fair to say then that if there were ministerial positions for one of those 2 parties, there would be for the other?
I'm not going to disclose what's happening in those negotiations at this stage.
Is there anything at this stage in the talks that you're having with New Zealand First that they're saying we need you to take certain aspects off the table for the Greens? We need to do a deal with you. We need to be able to say that this X and Y are not going to happen.
I again want to preserve the integrity of the conversation. So probably best for me in this regard to actually simply reflect what Mr. Peters himself has said publicly, which is that he's not interested in negotiations that are happening with any other party. He's only focused on his own party's policies and interests.
Are there policy bottom lines that have come from the Green Party?
Sorry, are there
policy bottom lines that have come from the Greens?
We're having a conversation. We've got a number of shared areas of interest, and that's been the focus of our conversations. We've had conversations around what kind of New Zealand we would want to build as a future government, and that's been dictating our conversations. And so as much as I hear a bit of commentary around, what's bottom lines and positions, actually it's been a constructive conversation based on policy and ideas.
How much, though, are the Green Party flexing their muscles? Because you do need them as much as you need New Zealand First.
Oh, and we're going to be absolutely fair-minded in all our negotiations around the role that each party plays and what they bring to the table. And that will be regardless of what part of the political spectrum they come from.
But you do need the support of the Green Party to
Indeed.
Get this over the line.
Indeed.
And so therefore there are aspects of Green Party policy that could make the deal less attractive for New Zealand First to do it with Labour because of some of the aspects that the Greens may want to hold you to.
And look, because of the role that both New Zealand First and the Greens would need to play in forming a government, I will be treating both parties with the dignity and respect that both parties deserve. It's up to me as the individual who is party to both negotiations to meld together what will be and form what will be a durable and long-serving government under a Labour leadership.
You haven't totally nailed down the deal with the Greens yet, have you?
Oh, there are negotiations underway. So
we're
in a process. Yeah, they're continuing. They've been going since the weekend. They're proceeding really well, and they will be concluding in time for the deadline that has been set. But I think all parties here want to behave responsibly in forming what will be a stable and durable government.
Are you anticipating essentially hammering out the deal with the Greens today? Because obviously you need to be able to then take to New Zealand First and say, this is what we've agreed with the Greens, the situation that we're now looking at.
These are individual and separate negotiations, and I will be treating them as such.
But just in terms of actually putting this together, we've got today, we've got tomorrow. At that point, probably New Zealand First, Winston Peters has to take this back to his party on Thursday, if that's the timetable that you're going to make.
And he's certainly confident of the possibility of us doing that.
But from that perspective, don't you need to have the deal with the Greens in the bag before that point?
Again, as Mr Peters himself has said, what we do with the Greens is up to Labour. It's a separate negotiation. It has nothing to do with his negotiation.
But he needs to know what New Zealand First is signing up for.
In the past, these have been separate negotiations, confidential to each party. I'm continuing along the track of making sure that I hold those negotiations with each party and that we are in the position to form a stable, durable government. That is my focus. That is my job.
You seem very upbeat when you come out of the talks. Is that your game face for the media, or are you actually confident of becoming Prime Minister?
That's because I'm confident, and also because they've been very constructive talks.
Thank you very much for your time. Jacinda Ardern there, the leader of the Labour Party.